Here's where we're at, man. Fraudulent Command Sergeant Major Tim Walz might be about to experience probably the greatest case of be careful what you wish for in all of human history. And I'm going to dig into Waltz's truly disgusting stolen valor in this video. I mean, this guy's got a million different things wrong with him, but stolen valor may actually be his most unforgivable. But before I get there, this is what he just said about a real Marine who actually did serve honorably, Senator J.D. Vance.
And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy.
Well, I mean, that's some pretty impressive big guy bravado. I mean, it's pretty clear why Kamala Harris had no choice but to pick the poor guy. But something tells me the bravado is going to fade pretty quickly when these guys actually do debate. I mean, Tim Walz still hasn't given even a softball welcome interview since he's been installed as vice presidential candidate, while J.D. Vance literally seeks out the media daily. He literally goes to where they are to answer their questions. And here's a little of what J.D. Vance actually has to say about who the real Tim Walz really is.
To me, that's the American dream. And if Tim Walz wants to insult it, I think that's frankly pretty bizarre. Now, look, what really bothers me about Tim Walz, it's not even the positions that he's taken, though certainly he has been a far left radical. You know what really bothers me about Tim Walz as a Marine who served his country in uniform? When the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful to prepare your unit to go to Iraq, to make a promise that you're going to follow through, and then to drop out right before you actually have to go. I also think it's dishonest. Something, again, if you guys ever get an opportunity to ask Tim Walz or Kamala Harris some questions, he made this interesting comment that the Kamala Harris campaign put out there, and I bet they're regretting they put it out there now, because he said that and he was making a point about gun control, he said we shouldn't allow weapons that I used in war to be on America's streets. Well, I wonder, Tim Walz, when were you ever in war? What was this weapon that you carried into war, given that you abandoned your unit right before they went to Iraq, and he has not spent a day in a combat zone? What bothers me about Tim Walz is the stolen valor garbage. Do not pretend to be something that you're not. And if he wants to criticize me for getting an Ivy League education, I'm proud of the fact that my mamaw supported me, that I was able to make something of myself. I'd be ashamed if I was him and I lied about my military service like he did.
Honestly, man, just listen to that, man. Just listen to that. If any one thing highlights the difference between the left and the right now here in 2024, it's this. I mean, you've got a blowhard old leftist puppet that literally lies about his military service, puffing out his chest and talking down to an actual Marine who joined the Marines after watching the 9/11 attacks and didn't quit when he got the call to actually go to Iraq to serve. I mean, that's the freeze frame right there. I mean, I don't think anything describes the difference between right or left any better than that. And honestly, it's just another perfect, just picture perfect example of Democrat dysfunction. And Tim Walz, he is the picture perfect Democrat, man. The guy is a complete and total coward. And amazingly, somehow hiding in a bunker while he allowed rioters to burn Minneapolis to the ground is not the most cowardly act that he's committed, not even by a long shot.
Back again to wage a public war of words against Tim Walz.
He abandoned us. I mean, what the hell kind of leader does that? I mean, as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
We'll get to Barron's new message for voters in a moment. But this all starts years earlier when Barron says Walz's misleading statements about his military service first led him to come forward in the fall of 2018.
So you try to get this message out, but Minnesota's largest newspaper checks it out, says it's 100% true, but yet refuses to print.
When I hung the phone up, I said, what the hell is this, North Korea?
Back in 2005, a warning order went out to the 1st Battalion 125th Field Artillery to mobilize for a mission to Iraq. At the time, Walz served as the unit's highest non-commissioned officer, but months later, Walz would retire from the Guard, avoid the deployment, and run for Congress. Tom Barron was next in line for the position and was asked to take his place.
I was like, well, for Pete's sake, if this guy quit, and if I say I'm not going to do it, I mean, what the hell kind of leadership is that? If a company would say that we're going to deploy to Iraq or somewhere and you're going to be gone for whatever amount of time, and then the foreman just says, no, I'm not going. I mean, what does that say to the 500 people that work in that factory?
Barron would go on to serve in Iraq on a nearly 2-year deployment as a command sergeant major. All while Walz began using that title as a congressman. Barron says he first contacted Walz with his concerns, sending these letters to Washington. They all went unanswered.
But then we fast forward to the election in 2018 in Minnesota, and you try at that time to get people's attention with this story and also with what seems to be a very misleading statement that he continued to make about his service.
It kind of just sat there. You know, when he was a congressman, he bragged that he was a command sergeant, retired command sergeant major. I'm the highest ranking person ever in the House, and all this lie that he was telling. The state of Minnesota came out after 2018, after this was exposed, and they said, well, he can say that he served as a command sergeant major, but he can't say he's a retired one because he's not.
And that's what he was saying.
And he was saying that, and there was lots of lots of cards coming in the mail, for him to be elected. They said right on there he's a retired command sergeant major, just tooting his own horn, just hanging on the coattails of people that actually are command sergeant majors that went through all the process and put all the time in.
A spokesperson for the Minnesota National Guard said Walz wasn't able to retire as a command sergeant major since he failed to complete coursework and requirements related to the rank. Verified documents show the Army corrected his service record. Walz was reduced in rank to an E8 Master Sergeant after retirement and his conditional promotion. Alpha News again asked Governor Walz if he's using the command sergeant major rank on his campaign website for political gain this year. A spokesperson said this has been in the news before and pointed us to a past story where Walz said, quote, normally this type of partisan political attack only comes from one who's never worn a uniform.
It's stolen valor is really what it is. I don't know of anybody else that's done what he's done, but we called it the truth about Tim Walz.
In 2018, Barron's gave the story the full court press.
We, retired command sergeant majors of the Minnesota National Guard, feel it is our duty and responsibility to bring forth the truth as we know it concerning his service record. I put together information on it and I sent it out to every single radio station and newspaper and TV station I could in the state. The bottom line in all of this is gut-wrenching and sad to explain. When the nation called, he quit.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Honestly, that stuff's tough to watch, man. What a truly just disgusting guy. Completely and totally shameless. And like I said, man, the guy is the picture perfect Democrat. I mean, who picks these winners, man? He's got tampons in boys' bathrooms. He's got sanctuary for all the gender nonsense. He had a snitch line for COVID, so you can tell on your neighbor having too many people in their house. And he's got stolen valor. And even worse than stolen valor, he's using stolen valor to push his gun-grabbing gun control. He says, take those weapons of war I carried in war off the streets. And like J.D. Vance said, man, I mean, the Harris campaign was literally using that as some sort of catchphrase. Like he said something fancy, something smart. And I got to say, man, the Democrats must really, really hate Jews if they chose this guy. I mean, this guy over Josh Shapiro, I don't know what they were thinking. They really, really bowed down to the far left crazies. And just think about the job the media now has to do. They have to literally redesign and reimagine both people on the entire Democrat ticket. They have to hide every single thing about these people while they literally dig up 3-year-old comments about cats to go after J.D. Vance this is how they treat stolen valor guy.
Kamala Harris picks Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as running mate.
What does Walz bring to this?
He's cuddly.
Cuddly.
Cuddly? I think she went for maybe a little more of a cuddly choice.
It tells more about the texture of the man.
He seems to almost have a twinkle in his eye.
Tim Walz is the opposite of weird.
Tim Walz beats America.
He sounds like, a football coach.
He's a hunter
That you could visit with at the hardware store. In a dictionary, if you had weird and anti-weird, you'd have Tim Walz's picture there. I bet knows how to make a good hot dish casserole.
He's very down to earth.
It's his authenticity.
Authentic communicator.
The word joy came up a lot.
He's joyful.
He seems happy.
A happy-go-lucky warrior.
And he's happy and a happy warrior.
The joyful warrior.
He is one happy warrior.
A happy warrior.
The happy warrior.
Nice guy.
Good guy.
A very nice person.
Reliable.
Definitely affable.
He is an extremely affable individual.
Very affable, plain-speaking way, a folksy vibe. This folksy idea.
Terrific vibe.
Vibes election.
Kind of a folksy guy. The idea that Tim Walz is some lefty is just not true.
I don't think either of them are Bernie Sanders progressive.
A rather safe pick. I think a safe pick.
The safe choice. This is a do no harm pick. Do no harm.
He's just more of a vanilla pick.
It's a younger version of Joe Biden.
We got Brad Summer. We've got coconut tree memes.
There's joy in the Democratic Party right now.
Those outside of Pittsburgh loves Tim Walz. So talk about Walz.
Isn't that freaking amazing, man? This is your American media, and this is how their game is played, man. They are fully in control of what millions and millions and millions of people actually believe. I mean, they control how these poor brainwashed victims actually see the world, man. There are real people out there with real jobs, real responsibilities, like real lives, somehow feeding themselves, that somehow believe that JD Vance is a weirdo who hates cat ladies. And Tim Walz is the salt of the earth, man. I mean, I don't see how they can possibly keep that up. I mean, eventually these people have to answer questions, right? They have to give a press conference. I mean, their true record has got to get out there. It's got to get investigated, right? But I mean, people have to actually get to know who they are. And if people do actually know, just get to know a little bit about who these people actually are, there's just no possible way that any reasonable person could ever vote for these people. But I mean, it is possible that no one even cares enough to get to know them anymore. I don't know. It reminds me of a pretty hilarious quote that's been attributed to Winston Churchill. There's some debate about that, but the quote, regardless of who said it, the quote is funny. It says, "The best argument against democracy is a 5-minute talk with an average voter." And I don't know, man. We shall see. We need the average voter to just open their eyes just a little bit. Don't even have to open them all the way, man. Just open them just a little bit, and you'll see who these people actually are. But that's just my take, man. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, guys, be a part of our growth. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.